好，同学们，老林经过长途的飞行，终于来到了波特酒之城 Porto。看我的背后，就是把在杜鲁河上游所酿好的波特酒，运送到出海口波特港来进行陈酿，并且出口的船只。当然，现在大部分都已经改用铁路来运输了。不过这边还是保留着以前的风貌，可以看到这个港口，还有船上的这些酒桶。是不是很有古风的感觉呢？现在在我的背后是很知名的波特酒酒庄啊 ，Quinta do Nova 以及 Sandman。因为现在还早，路上没什么人哦，趁这个时间来拍视频是最好的了。在我的背后就是一家本地很有名的波特酒酒商 Calem 的保税仓库，现在也是它的葡萄酒博物馆。我们一起进去看看。
My name is João. It's very nice to meet you. I will be your tour guide for today, okay? I will start by talking a bit about the history behind port wine as well as some of the history behind this specific cellar, alright? Later you will have your tastings. By then I will explain a bit about the wines that you'll be having, okay? If you have any questions in the meantime, feel free to ask them, okay? Don't worry. So to start out, Calem over here was founded in 1859. Okay, it was not one of the first cellars that started. There were some before. For example, Koch was one of the first ones that started in 1630. When Calem started out, they started exporting, especially to Brazil and South America, because that region didn't have that much port wine. Most companies were exporting to Europe mainly. Okay, so the South America part wasn't getting that much exportation. So they decided to focus a bit more on that area. Okay, later they expanded their business to all around the world like it is nowadays, okay? We export to many different countries, alright? It is about 120 kilometers up the river, okay, the same river we have here, the Douro River. In the Douro Valley is where we will find most of the vines planted. About 90% of the total production of the vines are planted into these small terraces all across the landscape, okay? These small terraces is a technique in agriculture that came from the Roman times. Portugal has inherited many traces of those times, especially in what comes to agriculture. And this would help to protect the vines from some of the winds, but most importantly to drain the excess water from the rain into the Douro River, right? These terraces had a specific stone in the soil that I will talk a bit later, which is schist stone. Over here we have an example of the terrain of the Douro Valley, alright? In this map, we can see exactly where the Douro Valley is, alright? This is a demarcated region. It is the first region all around the world ever to be demarcated and regulated, okay? It was demarcated in 1756. We are currently over here, okay, in Vila Nova de Gaia. If we were to go through the Douro River, 120 kilometers, we will get to the Douro Valley, right? The Douro Valley has what's considered the microclimate. The climate within this area works similarly, okay? The water can easily infiltrate the ground this way. That's why in the Douro Valley we use mostly the types of irrigation that happen mostly in the Douro Valley is only water from the rain and water from the river because it easily infiltrates underground and is stored underground for a couple of days. The vines are about 1 meter in height, but the roots go 7 meters deep. They age for about 3 years only, mostly in stainless steel, but there are some cases in which they age with some contact with the wood. For example, these two wines aged 3 years each. This one, half of that time was in contact with wood, and just with those 18 months, the color changes completely, okay? It gets a lot darker. Usually white ports, the more contact they have with wood, the darker they will become. And the tawny ports is the complete opposite. The more contact they have with wood, the lighter in color they will become, okay? Starting like this and almost ending up like an amber color, almost like a whiskey. Then we have the rosé port, which is made from red grapes, but we remove the skin of the grapes before crushing. So it removes, it makes the wine much more delicate, much smoother as well, because of the tannins. And also, it ages in stainless steel, alright? It's a really fresh wine, usually served at a really cold temperature as well. Then we have the typical type of port wines, the traditional ones, the rubies, which are these two, and the tawnies, which are these, okay? In the rubies, these have this dark red color. It's really difficult to confuse them, okay? And also the aromas you find on the rubies are really connected with fresh fruit, okay? Usually they are really fruity wines because they only age in those bigger vats we have. For example, over there there's a picture. The tawnies, we use the smaller barrels and they get a little more oxidation as well. So it changes the coloring and also the aromas. For the ruby wines, a really important one to mention is the vintage, okay? You probably have already heard of the vintage port wines. These are a really specific set of wines, that's why I'm going to explain it a bit. Vintage wines don't happen every year, okay? Actually, it's a bit difficult to get a vintage wine. When we have a really good year in terms of climate conditions, okay, a really rainy winter, a really hot summer as well, preferably, we will send this wine to the Institute of Port Wine so they can sample it. This is an institution that controls and regulates all the operations of port wine in all the cellars. They will run some samples on this wine, see the properties, see how it ages, and if they consider that it can be a vintage wine, okay, if it has the properties of being considered a vintage wine, they will let us know that they approve it, okay, after about 1 year or two, and after they tell us that, we will bottle it right away. It will not age in any barrel, okay, it ages just during this time in the bigger vats, okay, just 2 years. This wine is the only wine that is not filtered before being bottled. So all the sediments from the grapes will go inside the bottle with the wine, okay? This makes it that the vintage wine is the only wine we have that continues aging even after being bottled. All the other wines, as soon as you remove them from the vats, you bottle them, they stop the aging process. You can keep a bottle for 10 years in your house, the wine will still be as old as the day you bought it, okay? The only exception is the vintage, because it will still have contact with those sediments, it will keep aging, all right? For this to keep aging, okay, for this wine to keep aging, you should keep it in a safe place, away from any sunlight, any extreme heat, and preferably with the bottle lying down, so the wine touches the cork, expands it slightly, and doesn't let any oxygen come in, okay? This is the best way to store a vintage bottle. Later, when you want to open a vintage bottle, you have to filter it before drinking, okay, because it still has the sediments. This nowadays can be easily done using a coffee filter, for example. Just one is enough. About 20 to 30 minutes, you can get the whole bottle filtered into a decanter, for example. For example, the oldest one we have is from 1870, okay, a vintage port wine bottle. Usually vintage bottles, we save it for a lot of time, okay? For example, ideally, if you were to buy a vintage bottle and you wanted to drink it, okay, you would maybe get a better wine. For example, the better condition for a vintage bottle is probably 10 to 15 years after the harvest, okay? That's probably when the vintage wine will be in its best quality to drink, at least, okay? After that, it will get slightly better. But, for example, if you were to buy a vintage bottle to drink it nowadays, okay, it wouldn't be worth it to buy, for example, the vintage bottle of 2020 or 2018 or 16, okay? Because those wines are really young wines still, okay? They must age more time in the bottle. So usually, that's why we also have another different type, which is the LBV, for example, late bottle vintage, which is the same harvest as the vintage, but it was bottled later and it was filtered, so it's a ready-to-drink vintage almost. Because this wine has never had any contact with oxygen, and as soon as you open the bottle, the flavors, the wine will start oxidizing, okay? That's why the brand, for example, recommends you to drink the vintage bottle within 4 to 5 days. These vats can range from 5,000 liters to about 80 or 70,000 liters. Okay? A really big capacity. One Mini Cooper would actually be able to fit inside, all right? And we have some other vats that are slightly bigger than these. One of these vats could actually bottle, okay, one full vat would be able to bottle exactly 74,000 bottles. Just this one, all right? All the vats that you'll see here today are all full. The vats and the barrels are made mostly using French oak, okay? For these vats, it's about 100 planks. Then the rings, we do not have any type of glue, any type of thing to stick them together, okay? It's just these rings and the pressure they apply, all right, will keep the planks all together without leaking any wine. In the case of the process of the blend of ports, okay, this is an average, a demonstration of how it works, all right? So, for example, we have the 10, 20, 30, and 40 years Tawny, which is a really well-known type of port. We can have, for example, a mixture of a 19-year-old, an 18-year-old harvest, a 19, a 20, 21, and 22-year-old. all this mixture, the harvest, the average will be about 20 years. So that one will be considered the 20-year-old tonic. The amount of liters we have on this vat, okay, over there, all the way to the top, this one should be about 40,000 liters, 45. And the number on the right is the amount of barrels we can extract from each one of the vats, okay? At the moment, it's near the 74, 75 mark. So this means we can extract 75 barrels of 550 liters each. It's a harvest from 1958. This wine is currently not for sale. We usually sell it, for example, in some specific years. Okay, probably next year we will be selling it as well. The oldest wine we're selling is this one, the Colheita from 1961. So only grapes that were harvested in 1961. This wine has been aging ever since, and then it's being bottled as we go. The wine is not bottled altogether, okay? We will bottle, for example, some of these barrels, and then we will leave others to keep aging and the wine to keep gaining value. Okay? Usually, in terms of the wine ports, they are usually served before the meal as an appetizer, okay? We normally don't have port wine with the meal because it's really sweet and it's also stronger in alcohol. So usually we save it for after the meal or even before as an aperitif, okay? We have these three types of white port. They all age for 3 years. That's why white ports usually are a bit more affordable, okay? Because what matters the most in terms of the pricing on port wine bottles is the amount of years they will be aging, okay? It doesn't mean that they don't have enough quality. For a young wine, they have as much quality as they can get. We have these three types. The fine white, which is the standard type of white. Usually the aromas of tropical fruits, okay? Green apple, some honey as well. It's the average type of white. It has about 80 to 90 grams of sugar per liter, okay? Then we have the wet and dry, which we stop the fermentation process a bit later, so it's the driest port wine we have. This one has about 40 grams of sugar per liter, okay? So this one is actually good to accompany, for example, some salads, some seafood as well, because it's not as sweet, okay? It's a bit drier. Served at a cold temperature. And usually this type of port is also really good to make cocktails, okay? For example, Porto Tonic with the wine and dry, it's a really good one. If you prefer sweeter cocktails, you can even use the fine white or the rosé, for example, all right? Then we have the Lagrima, which is a really specific type of wine from this cellar, okay? It's an original one, actually. It's this wine over here. This is known as the sweetest port wine of all. All right. Currently, the sweetest port wine that's being produced is this one right here. Okay. The name Lagrima in Portuguese means tear. Okay. Basically, it has this name because it's the name we give to when we have an alcoholic drink in a glass and we swirl the glass. It will leave that trail sticking in the glass. Okay. That is what we call tear of the wine, basically. And the sweeter a wine is, the thicker it will be. So the bigger trail it will leave. This one is called Lagrima because of that. It's the sweetest one of all. It's the one that leaves the biggest trail, okay? This one has between 160 grams to 180 grams of sugar per liter, okay? So it's almost like 5 times the dry one and twice the average, okay? So it's an extremely sweet wine. I wouldn't recommend this one for before the meal like other whites because it's too sweet, really. Usually after the meal as a dessert wine, okay? But usually not before. The tastes. The aromas you get usually related to honey and really sweet fruits. Fine will be ages in the vat for 5 years, okay? The vintage ages for 2 years in the vat and then the rest in the bottle. And the late bottle vintage ages in the vat and then it will be bottled, it will be filtered and then bottled, okay? If you want a vintage wine or a good ruby wine to drink, you buy the bottle today and drink tomorrow, I would recommend probably an LBV because it's more affordable and the wine is already good to drink, okay? If you want to save a bottle in your house to store it for longer, let it age, I would recommend the vintage one, all right? These ones will keep aging, will keep getting better and better. You can get one from a specific year, for example, an important year for you, and then you save it and drink it in a special occasion. The only exception is the Colheita. All right, the Colheita, it's not a blended port. It's all the grapes were harvested in the same year. Usually you have it written over here, Colheita, and then the year of this harvest, okay, in the bottom part over here. This wine is the oldest one we have, like I said, at sale at the moment is the one from 61, and the most recent one is from 10 years ago because they always spend 10 years aging. So it was the one from 2013. Okay, next year we will have the next one. In 2 years we will have the other one. It's a really fresh wine, really good to drink in summer, for example, at a cold temperature, even to make cocktails as well. All right, it's much more delicate, really fruity and sweet as well. All right. So, do you have any questions about this? Anything you'd like to ask?